There are some people whose presence reminds us what it truly means to live fully, fiercely, and what becomes possible when we learn to master our minds. Air Vice Marshal Dev Ganesh is one of those rare souls. I've had the privilege of knowing him for nearly 3 decades, and every time I connect with him, I walk away inspired to do better, to be better, and to keep growing. Life has thrown many challenges his way, and yet he continues to rise. Post-retirement, when most of us want to slow down, he's learning how to play music. He's building a miniature rail track in his home, and he's writing a book which you'll soon be able to read. So how does he do it? How do you move through grief like that? How do you manage to stay strong despite all the challenges? These are some of the questions that we'll explore in this heartfelt conversation. Why? Because honestly, I feel if each of us could absorb just a little bit of that energy, that sense of humor, that spark, we could light up our own lives in extraordinary ways. So with deep respect and admiration, I invite you to listen, to reflect, and to be inspired by the incredible story and spirit of Air Vice Marshal Dev Ganesh.
Thanks, Ritika. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first of all, my first question to you is really about mindset, because one of those things that I really believe is that whatever you're going through in life, it's your mindset that really pushes you through it. And you have, I think, one of the most incredible mindsets I have ever known. So I want to ask you, what does mindset mean to you? And is it something that you consciously think about?
Yeah, I suppose consciously don't think about it, but I consciously do it. One thing I sort of learned was very effective early on in life when I started flying, actually. What hit me was the importance of living each moment. You know, it's incredible amount of time we waste every day just doing nothing, and life keep passing us by. And sometime later, you think, my gosh, I've just been sitting on the sidelines. I could have done so much or enjoyed myself that much more, or whatever it is.
Yep.
So one thing I learned from there is actually it's a very selfish thing which is required. That means live for the moment and extract the very most you can extract, as far as possible out of each moment, because it's never coming again anyway. So why do you want to waste it? So that's one lesson which has, actually speaking, seen me through fairly okay for the rest of my life. And secondly, along with this, especially when times are difficult, you've got to keep telling yourself, this too will pass. So between the two or three aspects like this, it's enough to see you through life, actually. The first one being most important, live every moment. If you have to suffer from anything towards the end of your life, it's far better to suffer from a lack of sleep rather than saying, oh, I wish I'd done this, I wish I met this guy, I wish I said this.
So live in the moment, and in that moment, whatever it is that you want to do it. Like, don't live with a regret so that later on you turn around and say, oh, I wish I had done this differently.
Absolutely.
Right. So where did this mindset come while you were in the Air Force? Did that help you, or were you like this before?
I must have been like this before, because nothing new was created once I joined the Air Force. I only tapped into my own resources, which were there, obviously. But I learned to bring it to the foreground and to utilize those resources which I had inside me once I joined the Air Force. And nothing really develops you like difficult times. You know, that's when you're put to the test and your best comes out.
You know, when I think of you, if I had to describe you, one of the top words would be resilience. Is there any, experiences at the Air Force or any incidences like that would have helped you with something like that?
Well, look, if you talk about resilience, that's something I'd learned from actually my parents, because without mentioning it, they sort of encouraged me to have the thought that, okay, so what does a setback? You're made of better stuff. You've got to step over this and carry on, keep going, without ever having mentioned it. Joining the Air Force, like I said, I keep going to that example which I keep giving of losing a lot of friends and flying accidents and things, because it's something that stays with you. And it stays with Ira also, my wife, because around that time we got married, and it had a totally different effect on both of us. For her, it was a traumatic experience,
Yeah.
and it was a different world for her. Whereas I could understand it. I was living it all the time, and I knew why it happened. For me, it's very real. It was normal, if
Yeah.
you can use that
Yeah.
word. The Air Force, actually, by living the walking the talk, as they say, they forced me to live the way they wanted me to operate. For example, let's say in the afternoon, while flying in the afternoon, we have a crash in the squadron and somebody gets killed. So there's a lot of normal stuff going on, the administrative stuff. Okay, inform the parents, inform this, inform that, do this, do that. But the main thing is they made sure that everybody handled it in his own way. I mean, the ways of handling it are different, but
Yeah.
they made sure that nobody ducking the experience. He made sure everybody looks it in the eye and handles it that way. How he handles it is up to him, but he has to handle it. He can't duck. He can't go away and get drunk and lose himself in a stupor for the next 4 days and things like that. All of us had this tradition of the same evening of the accident. All of us met at the bar for a drink. And we were drinking and talking, and in a very informal way, talking about the guy who's recently departed and
Yeah.
thinking of funny stories and this and that or the other. That one thing drives home a number of lessons. Firstly, if somebody gets killed, there's no big deal. It's happening everywhere, every time. Right? Right now, it's happening next to you. So it appears very earth-shaking.
Yeah.
Secondly, it teaches you one thing. You must keep going regardless of whatever's happening. So I was telling you the tradition we used to have the Air Force had in fighter squadrons, whenever there's an accident or something, for everyone meets in the bar the previous evening for a drink. And the next morning, early morning, the entire squadron flies. We get up and fly. We fly a normal kind of sortie, practice combat, low level, whatever it is you've done. And to carry out a normal working day, right? And to meet in the bar again, for a drink in the evening. Now, in those 24 hours, a number of things happen which you don't have to even consciously think about it. It just happens. Number one, you automatically know that your body gets used to the fact that life has to carry on. And you're taking 10 or 15 or 20 decisions and very important decisions. How do you do it? You do it by compartmentalizing your mind. And the painful part of it, you put to the side. You don't try and ignore it. You can't get rid of it, but you put it on the side and do what has to be done now. Two things are this thing. Firstly, you do what is required of you.
Yeah.
Secondly, you don't duck from the responsibility of facing that grief head on and handling it. You might postpone it, but you must handle it. So that is one example of how the Air Force taught me of how to handle adversity. And I found the same thing happening for various other situations. It didn't just apply to fighter accidents.
Yeah.
I used the same technique when, as you know, I lost my son sometime back 10 years ago. I used the same technique then, saying that, okay, there's plenty of time for grieving. What has to be done now is A, B, C, D, E. Let's get on with it. Everybody else might say, how can you do something like this and at a time like this? They think you're a Superman, or they think you're a callous monster. How can you do this? And when you're, so and so things, it just happened. And they see you acting normal because that situation demands it. So you do it, whatever is required.
Yeah.
And that sort of gives you the resilience. Now, all the resilience, stamina, strength, these are all side effects which come in from the main lesson.
Yeah.
And which look after yourself. You don't have to concentrate on, any particular thing. Like, I must learn how to be resilient, or I must learn how to be strong, and so on. So you don't even know it's happening, but it happens.
Yeah. So what you said is that when you're going through like grief and profound grief at that, the important thing is to compartmentalize and know that there is a time for grieving, and at this point of time, there is things to be done as well. And of course, you have to look after yourself along the way as well. So we have to keep doing, and that is really important. But there are people who get stuck in that grieving process and find it overwhelming and very difficult to manage and get out of it. So what are the few, steps that you would advise them to do? What are the things they should think about? And how should they at least start to get themselves moving again?
Actually, what I think now, this might sound pretty heartless, but I'm just trying to be realistic.
Yep.
Most of the time when I see people struck by a personal loss, let's say, and they seem to be more sorry for themselves,
Yeah.
firstly, than they are for the person who it happened to. And they don't realize the fact that they're only looking inwards at themselves. What am I going to do? How will I live? I'm so used to this. I'm going to miss it. It's all I. It's all the inconvenience or the sadness or whatever that they are going through. Whereas that's the least important thing in the world. It's actually that person. It's actually that person's mother and father, how they feel. Are they coping with it? And who's going to look after the dog? Is somebody doing that? Feed the poor guy? Things like that. So
Yeah.
your attention should be outwards, looking for things to be done. There's plenty of time to look inwards. And you don't have to do anything or find a time to grieve. Right? You don't have to dress up in a suit and tie and say, okay, I'm grieving. It doesn't work like that. So most guys waste time in what they think is a show of grief, which it probably is. They're not trying to, fool anybody. But actually speaking, it is an expression of self-grief. I mean, they're looking inwards on how life has treated them unfairly, how they are going to manage, how sad they are, how they are being inconvenienced. And they actually think that they're grieving about the guy who's died. They aren't. They're grieving about how it's affected their own lives, which actually is the least important at that particular time. So, in a nutshell, I'm just saying that if you have to face a tough decision, then meet it head on and look for the things in that situation. Firstly, is somebody else hurt? What can you do to make things better? And always tell yourself, my grief can come later. I can choose when to grieve. You won't believe that, Ritika, when after Dhruv, that's my son, after he died, I never cried because I was too busy. There are millions of things to do, right? The first time I cried was, it happened in January. So first time I cried was when we had shifted house. We'd come to Secunderabad. I sat here in the month of end of June or middle of July, somewhere around that time. That was the first time. A good at least 6 months before the whole thing happened. After it happened, I mean. People think they're expected to do something and they get worried if they don't feel like doing it. They think there's something wrong with them. Yeah. In fact, I think that's the healthiest possible thing. If you can concentrate on the other things around you which need fixing, and you can once again compartmentalize your feelings to look at a later time. That's a great thing. There's nothing wrong with it.
So it's not like you're denying those feelings. You are spending time with yourself, and you are doing that me time where you are reflecting and trying to find out what exactly is it that I missed. But you don't have to do what you think other people want you to do because you're going through the grieving process. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and it's basically you're just prioritizing what all needs to be done. Do this first, this second, and this can come later, last, and things like that.
Yeah.
So. But generally, these couple of principles, if you do them diligently, or if you make that a habit, actually, if you make it a habit, then you can handle most things in life without even thinking about it. It'll come as a habit.
Does it get better, the grieving process? Does it get?
No, unfortunately.
Or do you still feel?
You feel just as bad. It's just that there's a lot of misnomers. Like people tell you time is a great healer. Actually, it's not. Time is not a great healer because you still feel what you felt on that first day. Yeah. What got you on the first day is the shock of the whole thing, the thing that happened suddenly
Yeah.
And when you are least prepared for it,
Yeah.
and it got you off balance, and so your whole world came crumbling down. That
Yeah.
is the thing that hits you. And that is not there anymore because all the peripheral stuff has been looked after. But the
Yeah.
loss itself is still there.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't change. Everything else is gone. You're left with that loss, and that loss is exactly the same as it was 5 minutes after it happened.
Yeah.
So when they say that you know time is the great healer and things will get better, and actually what they mean, of course, is saying that you don't have the other peripheral stuff. You have
Yeah.
only the grief, and to you it seems like most of it is gone. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the stuff that you were grieving about has disappeared and has become small.
Yeah.
It's not that it's become small, it's just peripheral issues have fallen off. That's all.
Yeah.
They've been left behind by time, and what only the crux of the whole thing, the point,
Yeah.
the nub, the focus, the whole thing is still there, and it'll
Yeah.
always be there.
Wow. So one of the tougher parts of challenges that you face is also a few health concerns. So one is trigeminal neuralgia, and of
Yeah.
course you also have multiple sclerosis. So these are not easy health challenges, and for most of us, we get a headache and we feel like life has stopped, and we don't want to do anything post that. But for you, you have, like, now that you're retired, you're building like this little rail track because you've always been interested in railway and things
Yeah.
like that. And you're also writing, you're an author, you're writing a book, and that's amazing. So through all of this, how do you manage to do that?
I mean, no, I'm just doing what I like doing, frankly. There are ways to prevent yourself from once again going through a chest beating kind of a procedure, saying, why me, and
Yeah.
why does it have to happen to me? Look at those guys, they're so fit and they're fine, they have no problems. And
Yeah.
so the first thing you have to accept is there will always be people who are better off than you and always be people worse off than you. Right?
Yeah.
Well, you can, if you look hard enough, you'll find a million guys below you who don't have it as good as you actually have it. So you got to look at it in perspective. You find it easier to pick up guys who are doing better than you. I mean, that's normal. But
Yeah.
to pick up guys who are doing worse than you have to, because you've already convinced yourself you're the unluckiest guy in the world. So so to try and see a chap who's got it rougher than you have takes a bit of effort. And then if you've learned your earlier lesson, what I spoke about in the beginning, about living each moment, not letting any moment go waste.
Yeah.
Now that will come to your rescue now and say, look, if I keep moaning and groaning about why I can't do this and why it hurts so bad, and I wish I could go ice skating, but I can't even walk, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Then you'll never, and the entire life is going to pass in front of you. Yeah, maybe you can't do the same things you wanted,
Yeah.
but there's so many other ways to look at it. For example, a lot of people have actually asked me, don't you feel that the universe is treating you badly? I mean,
Yeah.
here you are, and you should be, everybody is having fun going around after retiring, traveling, seeing places and all that. So that's the time, it's very easy to fall into that trap, mind you.
Yeah.
And you've got to actually yank yourself out of it and look on the bright side. For example, the bright side is, especially in the kind of job I've been, throughout your life, I mean, I spent about close to 40 years flying fighter and being in the Air Force, right? Now, there have been, and it happens to everybody, nothing special about me. There have been about 6 or 7 times where I've had such narrow escapes, which in all fairness, I should never have survived. But I did because something happened,
Yeah.
right? So, and the first of them happened when I was 20 years old, 21 years old, and happened again
Wow.
a little later, a little later. The latest one happened when I was about 45 years old. Moment I got through that first narrow escape I had when I was 19, learning how to fly, I was a cadet. That's the time my instructor said that, okay, now remember this as you go through life. Life could have changed so much today You could be dead, you could be 10 feet underground. Your mother and father would have got a telegram by this time. Their world would have changed. We'd all be running around because of you, trying to fix up a funeral and doing this and that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nothing that has happened. So from this point onwards, just remember everything is a bonus. I mean, you're living life as it's, you got a brand new life free. It's like that. So don't ever think that you're unlucky because no one can be luckier than this. And people say, don't you feel like life has treated you unfairly? I said, don't be nuts. You know, I should have died a million times before this. And here I'm retiring and seeing my grandkids and things like that. Unfairly, I'm feeling sorry for guys who haven't been through this because looking at your own life in perspective and seeing how things could have been worse. And believe me, if you do that, you'll be horrified how you almost came to grief every other day. So you have a lot to be grateful for. That's the end of the whole thing.
So, sir, last question for you is, what advice would you give our younger generation and people listening? What advice would you give them based on your own life experience? One is, of course, the big one is live in the moment.
Always look for all the plus points, the things that have happened to you. Like, for example, all the close shaves you've had and all the times which could have gone very bad for you, but you got saved for whatever reason. They'll find them in the unlikeliest place. I remember once when we were in Delhi, when Tara and Dhruv, my kids were younger, school going, we used to drive to Delhi from Noida and then drive back late at night, seeing my wife's parents and things. When driving back at night, we used to be hot and sweaty and short-tempered and all the lights weren't working and the cyclists and trucks crossing over. So everyone was on the warpath except Tara and Dhruv. They would be singing away. One evening while going back, I told Ira, you know what? I don't believe in heaven the way they say it is. There are no white clouds and angels playing harps and things. This is heaven. When you're hot and sweaty and going back, actually speaking, you're there with your kids, having a great time, and you're irritated because somebody's crossing the road without a hand signal. But this is actually heaven. And you'll only realize it 20 years later when you say, oh, hell, what a great time that was. So I said, you got to figure out and recognize these bits of heaven. You'll find a lot of them out here. And once you recognize them, you'll be, rich for life. I mean, you'll find those same kind of places everywhere. So that's something which I don't know whether it makes sense, but to me it meant a great deal.
It makes a lot of sense. I feel that as well. Like when I see my kids growing up, and so many small, things where we laugh about something, or you get to spend. Sometimes it's the toughest of things, but then I look around and I see, them, my husband, or my parents there, and I feel like I should be just grateful for this moment. That we get to have an experience, we get to have a laugh, we get to get through it.
Yeah. And the main thing is, a good time is not, everyone sort of builds up a picture of what a good time will be.
Yeah.
If I'm going on a holiday for 10 days, how it's going to be, how light my mind is going to feel, and how full of energy, and how the weather is going to be good. And when you actually go, there's no hotel reservation, you're sleeping in some crummy place with power failure and mosquitoes and all that. Actually speaking, you're having a good time, you just don't realize it. And even that can be salvageable. So if there's a takeaway from this, it is actually the good times always exist, but in the kind of package they are in are not the same as you might think they are. You got to look for them, and they're still there. So it's like I was saying, heaven comes in different forms, and it won't be the angels playing harps kind of thing. It could be, heaven the way all four of you as a family driving back and arguing at each other and yelling at the cyclists, and that's heaven.
Wow. So I think the punchline would be like we need to rebrand the way that we think about good times or happy times. We need to think and know that we can find that light or that happiness even when
Mm.
things are not exactly going
Yeah,
the way that we want it to be.
absolutely.
Wow. Thank you, sir. What a fabulous, ground shaking conversation I have had with you. There were so many moments where I felt like literally the hair at the back of my neck were standing. And I completely resonate with so many things that you have said. And I hope that our listeners also, see the inspiration that you have been to me. And I hope they can take even an iota of your energy and take it back to their lives. So that'd be amazing. Thank you so much for being a part of
Thanks,
this
Vedika. It's
conversation.
been great fun. Thank you.